Welcome to the realest podcast you'll ever listen to. I'm LT.
I'm Kiki.
And we're here to talk blunt.
Black ladies, unequivocally North Tulsa. Let's talk blunt talk.
Are you ready to talk blunt?
I am.
What are we talking about today?
I want to talk about the events of the Tulsa disaster by Mary E. Jones Parrish and her insight into the Tulsa massacre.
What do you think was different about her telling of the events when so many people have told the events, especially over the last few years following the, centennial of the riot?
Yeah, for me, it was the fact that she was a Black woman and she talked about publishing it on her own. It was also because I have read other books that were written by white men and other people. Not that, that necessarily matters, but I think for me, it was important because it was her voice and she lived through it. And I know there are a lot of books out there that have different perspectives, but this particular book spoke to me. And then she documented some things because she was a journalist. She documented some things in a different way. Like in her foreword, right off the bat, she says, the dire anti-lynching bill. The passage will be glorious, victory towards making the United States safe for us, peaceful, law-abiding Black citizens. And to find out that it got passed 100 years later, that to me was very provocative because it's like, here she's like saying, yes, lynching will end because of this. And it was just passed, in 22 or 23. I think it just says a lot about how she saw it. And then she also documented what I didn't know was the lynching of a white man the previous year.
Yeah.
How she documented that lynching. And, when I went back to look at it, it was almost like the sheriff at the time was like, oh, it'll serve its purpose, and I think it was literally a build up to, or part of the build up. You had the incident itself, but when you look back on different massacres that take place in the United States in Black communities over the course of the 20s, 30s, 40s, a lot of it started with that Black man stepping on a white woman's toe or a Black man rubbing up against a white woman. And so I really think that her documenting that lynching of a white man was significant because it kind of played into what else went on at that time. And she also documents the war. Right. And that being, she even references how the tactics they used in the massacre were tactics that they learned fighting the war, the bombing, how you hear how they were dropping these kind of bomb type material that started fires that were, igniting Greenwood.
So for me, and having watched quite a few documentaries over the last few years, especially as we were leading up to the centennial and going through all of that, and we have read the book, we also listened to the audio, and the audio also brought some different perspectives in the book. But what I liked is that yet were there facts that was brought out in her accounts that has never been brought out in some of the other documentaries. One of the things that I think no one really talks about is the event that led up that day when everything really hit. They always talk about, there's Dick Rowland. He gets on his elevator, he possibly trips, he bumps her. The piece I thought that was really ironic that no one really seemed to break down before is that, first of all, he didn't work in that building. He worked in another retail building, but in those days, there weren't always facilities to use. So anybody working in that retail store had to go over to this building. And so they talk about how this elevator operator, Sarah, would have had to have seen him many times before.
Mhm.
So it's not like he was a stranger to her.
Mhm.
It's not like he was a stranger to anybody else in that building, because he would have frequented that daily
Mhm.
to use the bathroom. Yet this kind of became such a big deal about him tripping. So this wasn't like a stranger that just popped in the elevator and accidentally touched you. This is someone that you would have had conversations with day in and day out.
Mhm.
So I thought that was really kind of interesting. What I also thought was interesting was that there was so much that had gone on prior to that day that set the stage for that day. Like the atmosphere and the environment was right for it. So you've got on one side of the tracks, you've got people who are wealthy people who are, they'd migrated here from other states where African Americans didn't have wealth,
Mhm.
could not even do any of the things that they were able to do in Tulsa.
Mhm.
On the other side of the tracks, you got African Americans that's migrating here from other cities and states. And primarily a lot of the reason that drew them here was the wealth that was being accumulated by African Americans, and that ability to grow and to develop and to grow that generational wealth. And it was a very independence in the African American community. And one of the things that I think about our day and time, and how, probably if we thought like this, we probably would be a lot further as a generation than where we are. But they were all about, in the African American community, they're in what we call Black Wall Street. They were all about keeping the dollars in the community.
Mhm.
I think it said the dollar could be spent 6 or 7 times before it ever left a community.
Mhm.
So you've got that going on this side, and on that side, I'm not happy, because they're over there, they're becoming as wealthy as me, and I need to oppress them. I need to keep them down. And so you've got this over here, like, you're not going to do this to me, and we can. So at the moment that this breaks out, this side is going, I'm going down there.
Mhm.
We're gonna protect. But the other piece that I thought, and I've even gone back, even after reading this book, and I've watched some more documentaries, it leads you to believe that the police or the sheriff had everything handled, and he was just working with the white side of the tracks. But in reality, he had called African Americans down there to help him, because he wasn't sure he would have she had started.
In the book, she calls out and says things about law enforcement where they were trying to help. It wasn't, every white person against. There were actually people
Correct.
who were trying to help defend Greenwood.
Correct.
And one of the things that she points out early on in the chapter that I kind of rung into is that Tulsa at that time was calling not just African Americans and black people. It was calling people to the area in general.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the settlers who were not as wealthy or low income, they were like, hey, those black folks over there, using a different word, what are they doing? They got more than we do.
That's right. That's right.
And so
That's why they invited it.
yeah. And so she actually said that, there were conversations going on among, leaders in Greenwood saying, like, we getting some rumbling.
Right.
Them settlers over there,
Right.
they don't like what's going on
That's right.
here. And I think that because they felt so secure, you got hotels, hospitals, banks,
Right.
doctor's office, clinics, stores, all these things. It wasn't newspaper. It was real. And so to think that someone would come in and just destroy your livelihood like that, it was just, it wasn't tangible. She talks about being at an event the day it happened, and a young boy coming and running and saying, hey, they trying to protect this young man at the sheriff's office because there is a lynch mob growing, and then they go home and they go to bed.
Because they dismiss and don't think like, this isn't gonna be.
Well, I think they were concerned, but they also knew they had manpower.
Right.
They had people in the community who were going to stand up. They didn't realize there were going to be airplanes and truckloads of folks coming in to finish off the job.
But what's portrayed in history is that these angry African American men march down to the courthouse because they're going to protect him and they're not going to when in reality, they were called down there.
Yeah.
And then you've got these white men who decide, you can't be packing this rifle down here. What are you doing? I'm taking that.
Mm-hmm.
Gun accidentally fires off.
Yeah,
Everything breaks out.
Yeah.
So I think there's facts that is often lost along the way. I don't think in any of the other documentaries or anything I ever read that I understand how they came through the neighborhoods, lining them up and having them walk down the middle of the street with their hands up and barefoot and shooting at them.
Yeah. Trying to get, it was reminiscent. And I have to bring up George Floyd, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like it serves such a parallel to what happened in 1921. And then here we are sitting at home in our houses during the pandemic, almost 100 years later. And I really think for me, that was like the first thing, because I've been to the site where George Floyd was killed, where they have this memorial and really trying to keep a reminder of what happened on that day alive. Mm-hmm. And this book, for me, it took me right back in front of my TV watching the George Floyd, wanting to know, what could I do? What did I need to do? And so the parallel of having those men walk with their hands up, barefoot, some of them not even having the opportunity to put on clothes.
That's right.
Some of them not even having the opportunity to say bye. You separated families.
Yep.
And I think it reminds us of, if we don't remember our history, then we're bound to repeat it. And that forgotten history is not forgotten. It's just laying dormant. And it's our responsibility to teach our kids about what they should be doing as we get older, to continue having the conversation. It's not about being angry. It's not about, do I believe there should be restitution? Absolutely. And again, that might be another blunt talk. Yeah. But restitution is something that when you go through this and you read the book, and me and my son went to the Greenwood Rising. When you come to Tulsa, don't just come as a tourist.
Right.
Come with something that, you want to leave. If you come to Tulsa, you need to come to the Greenwood Rising, because they have provocative questions at the end. What can we do to address and end racial injustice? And it's not just a conversation about what happened, right, but it's also a conversation about what we need to do now.
Yeah. Shout out to the Greenwood Rising. I've been a couple times, and it's an awesome experience, and I will go time and time again. I do want to get to the restitution but before we go there, I want to go back a second, because you said, it's important for us to remember our history. So that's one of the things that really, really hit me as well, is that look how many years passed, over 60 years before we ever started to really talk about. And you know what? First of all, let's back up. Shame on us, because we're going back to calling it a riot, when in reality, it was not a riot. It was a massacre.
It was a massacre.
But for many years, it was called a riot. But did you learn about this in school?
I did not.
Yeah. But where did we grow up?
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
North Tulsa. And we weren't even taught about a massacre that took place in our hometown.
Yeah.
We had no idea of even these experiences. And if you go back in the history and you read, and that was one of the last documentaries I was looking for, it's like the evolution of Greenwood, because I can remember when a big field separated, coming from the south of Greenwood from the north of Greenwood, as you're coming up from Carver down what we traditionally knew as Greenwood, but not really even knowing, like how did this get, never even knew that this was open field. Yeah, open field.
And to think that people lost their lives there, and there was never a memorial or anything. Speaking about the first time I heard about it, so when my sister got married, she joined her husband's church, and he was a member of Mount Zion Baptist Church. And I can remember my first visits to Mount Zion with my sister, standing in a foyer waiting for the church doors to open. And I'm looking, and they've got these pictures of Greenwood. I'm like, Greenwood, and that's one thing I will say that Miss Parrish does a great job of. She talks about the churches.
Mhm.
She talks about Mount Zion. She talks about the history of, how different pastors were coming along. And so it really does take you back into that time frame of where Tulsa was at that time and the leaders that were there and they were leading. And she just really lays it out. And I think that's another good reason why I like the book is because she was a reporter. She tells it in a way that is informative. There's opinions in there. She does tell how she feels and she takes accounts from different people as her great granddaughter lays out in a video with a scholar here in Tulsa. But she just really, it's like she wanted to get people in the moment to see, hey, this is what's happening. This is how people are feeling right now. And she wanted to capture that like only a true reporter could.
Right. And because it's not only her account that's in there, there's several of
She interviewed.
and everybody has those little details about their experiences, which helps to really shape and put you in the mindset of being there. I actually have the privilege to attend one of the churches that was a part of the riot. But honestly, we didn't even really understand the details as a church until it was leading up to the centennial. And they started holding meetings and bringing things together, and all the stories started to come out and the rising. And you just start to uncover all these facts that you never really knew. So really, really encourage people to read this book. It really is a good book. So let's talk about the restitution. So me and my husband, we've had debates about this. He, like you, believe that there should be restitution. Tell me how you feel the restitution fixes this. Like, what is it that we're?
It's not about a fix. It's like,
Restitution.
to me, I liken it to a tornado coming to town. If your home is destroyed, you've got insurance, you've got something there that can try and make you whole. This was an event that the city of Tulsa failed people. They failed to protect their citizens. And to me, there should be some way of going back and taking account of what was lost at that time. And I think, if we get a chance to revisit this and bring some folks in who either had people who lived through that, I mean, we really want to do that. But what Ms. Parrish did again is at the end of her book, she actually lists out partial lists of losses, names, and what people lost. Miss Gurley, $65,000. Mr. and Mrs. Jackson, $15,000.
Well, so while you're talking about the list of losses, let's also make sure we speak on insurance never paid any of it.
No, it did
Never played out a claim for any of it.
And not to say that people didn't try.
Right.
I mean, I
Absolutely.
think even up to 22, 23, fighting so that Tulsans could go back. There are families still alive today that this impacted generational wealth. And we see generational wealth all the time. We're going to talk about, another topic around salaries and everything, but this is a part of generational wealth and leaving that legacy for families. And the fact that they, just ripped away generations worth of not just, yes, money, but also housing, parks, recreation, communities. It's funny you talk about nowadays, you hear walkable communities. This is what Greenwood, it was a walkable community. Everybody knew each other. They were doing things here that, years later, we talk about are fundamental to our health and being able to strive in these communities. So I just think I appreciate what the current administration and past administrations have done. I just think there needs to be more.
But how do we not end up here a decade or two from now still having these same conversations? Like what is that? What is it that we want as a community? What does that look like? Especially when
I want that back. Build a hospital in North Tulsa.
Yeah.
Build a store in North Tulsa. I want that back. It's great that you are, memorializing with museums, but I want this world back. I want Tulsa to figure out, and I'm willing to be a part of it. How can we bring this back? Because for years, we didn't have a grocery store in North Tulsa. Right? And when we did, it was expensive. Like a carton of milk was 2 times, 3 times more than if you cross the tracks and go to South Tulsa. So that's what I want. I want a plan to rebuild Greenwood.
Well, and if you look at, because today, I'm sorry, but we know it as one little strip.
Exactly.
But it was so much
more.
I mean, I was surprised when I read that what we've known as the depot station, which is now the Jazz Hall of Fame, that was a part of the Greenwood district. I mean, so look how far it stretched over. And these are things today, you know, we love our baseball field, but we've got our baseball field sitting there. Restaurants they've opened up. We've got what we refer to, they don't think they call it that anymore, but I'm going to show my age. I still call it UCAT. We've got UCAT that's been built there, the University Center at Tulsa. That was going to change our lives forever. It is a great thing, don't get me wrong, but we also not exactly. But we do have Langston University now that has a campus in North Tulsa, so that's good. But there's so much that has taken shape in the spaces that was considered our Greenwood district. And we just saw recently where we've torn down the Sunset Apartments. Oh my gosh, I remember when the Sunset Apartments were built and everybody wanted to get an apartment up on the hill in Sunset. And now that's been struck. So what are we doing with this space? What are you going to do with all of this?
Well, I think to that conversation involving the community that lives, you know, I felt like I had to move away because I didn't feel like I could provide for my family. Growing up in the 80s, you know, there was a lot of gang violence in North Tulsa, you know, just a lot of things that made me think twice about raising my family in Tulsa. And the fact that I couldn't do that, or I felt like I couldn't do. Now, as I'm getting older, I would love to retire and come back and live in Tulsa. But I want to come. Oh, I might. I'm not saying never, saying that. All right. But anyway, carry on. Maybe I'm back now. But I really think a lot of it is because, you know, we were kind of taught to make a living, we had to go away.
That's right.
I mean, a lot of people stayed, but growing up, you know, my mother was like, you're going to have to get out and do more and, you know, get out of Oklahoma, because there was still that heavy sense of racism that was keeping African Americans down and from really advancing. And every now and then somebody would punch through, or you had success. I mean, you've done it here in Tulsa, but a lot of us left and didn't go far, you know, like Texas, Kansas, Missouri, things like that. But we left because we felt like, okay, in order for me to make a living, I've been told all of my life as a Black person, I have to leave.
Right.
And so now, along with that, you know, kind of going back to what do we do? Bring it back, you know, make this city a city where I can bring my children back and they can make a living here, livable wages and things of that nature. I think Tulsa has a lot to offer to everyone, but we've still got a lot to overcome.
Yeah. And, you know, so weekly, I mean, at least every Sunday, as I drive through that district coming from church, and I see all the people that are coming from near and far to tour the area. But it's a strip. And I see many people that are capitalizing off of what has happened here. But we're not restoring it, and we're really not doing with it. And actually, you know, I have to say, big kudos to the community who has really stood up and spoke out against people even trying to come in and purchase spots outside of Tulsa and outside of Oklahoma, because they understand that now it has such a name and such attention on it. But once again, I just want to see us get to a point to where we're not a decade from now or two still talking about this. And I want to make sure that the correct history is out there so that we don't have future generations not learning. You know, I want to know, I think I know the answer to this, but are we teaching this in today's school system and histories? Probably not.
Well, social media teaches our kids so much.
Well, so now we know that what social media teach our kids may not be always, the appropriate way to teach it. And we want to teach it in a manner to where we can do something productive about it. We don't want to teach it in a manner to where we wake up and we walk out angry. And we can't.
See, that's what we disagree.
Here we go.
Blunt talk.
Okay.
But I think
all blunt. How blunt?
So often with African Americans and Black people, there is an undertone of anger. And I think you have to understand it's not about being angry all the time. A lot of it is about being informed, and now I want to do something.
Right.
And because what me and my girlfriends call our uniform, this is my uniform. It doesn't change. Every day I come out, same nose, same mouth, same hips. In that uniform, it can be perceived as angry. And so that's one of the things I think we have to do with our narrative is start talking about it in passion can build a house and burn a house down. I agree with you. But I think we have to also look at how the racial fatigue that is real in America today, political undertones that lead to some of that racial fatigue. And, it just is one of those things where I'm concerned. I don't want to be stereotyped. If I'm vocal about something, if my voice reaches a different octave, work with me and understand and meet me where I am, but don't label me as angry.
So I agree with you, especially as a person that carries a lot of emotions. And my family will sometimes say, okay. And I'm like, I'm not angry. I don't just, I have emotional ties to this topic or whatever. So I get that. So I can appreciate that. It's the perception of it. However, we also, though, have to be careful because sometimes out of that does come angriness. Sometimes out of that does come crying and unintended consequences. Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. That's that you got to narrate the right story. Right. Well, yes, that is in general. But I think it is easy to get, I would not be honest with myself if I said I'd never watched some shows about injustice or read some things about injustice, and I have to find myself baiting it down because I'm angry. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to need to get this together before I go to work tomorrow. And I could walk out without a job. Be like, Kim, I need a place to stay because you know what? I just told somebody off.
Right.
So, let's be real. There are times that we do have to check ourselves. And so if I already don't have that ability or that resiliency in me to rise above it. So that's all I'm saying is we got to be careful about the way we tell the story. So, thank God for, hey, I know we can, in our home, we can watch something and I'm like, okay, Mr. Wilson, Richard, bring it down a notch, because he all charged up or I'm all charged up. And so we have to check it before we go back to the next day.
I agree with that, but I think that's a part of telling our story, why we started Blunt Talk, why we need Blunt Talk as an avenue to be able to constructively tell our story, not just about the events of Tulsa, the Tulsa massacre, but in general. We have to be able to have a venue so people can feel and understand and see what the other side looks like.
One thing for me that I think I would want to leave, my thoughts that I would want to leave with this particular episode is that the power we can have as a community. And I think that's what
the power we have, not can have.
No,
the power is there. It's just funneling it in the right way.
But we've got to find a collective voice to get there. And
we have to appreciate everyone's voice to get there.
I agree with that.
Diversity in that voice.
But it has to start with us. And that's the thing that I think so many times we're waiting for somebody else, and it has to start with us. When I think about what they were able to do before, how they worked together to keep their dollars in the community. And let's face it, I mean, you even said yourself, when by the time we came along, we were like, we gotta get out of here to rise above. So we were like, we didn't even want to spend in the community. We were all about, I'm going to Texas to get my prom dress. I'm going here. So we weren't only not spending in our community, we weren't even spending in our city and state.
Yeah.
We were spending outside. So we have to intentionally, we don't even want to support each other when we have our own businesses. Now, that's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there's reasons why we don't want to support our own.
I think
I'm just saying. But bluntly talking, we have to come together as a collective voice. And yes, we have the voice, but we have to use the voice. And I think so many times we are always waiting for somebody to give us a voice. Someone that's near and dear to me, and not because of this topic, something totally different, always said, we are who we've been waiting for.
mm-hmm.
We are who we've been waiting for. So no one's going to come along and fix this for us. And so it's for us today in this timing to fix it. Because if we keep waiting for somebody to come along and to fix this, we might be decades down the road and our children are still, trying to figure out how to fix this. So we are the voice that we've been waiting on. And so I think that's what I would.
Yeah, and I'll say, if you are an entrepreneur and you want to invest, go to Greenwood. Let's bring back what was lost. And kudos to those businesses that are coming, that are there. And let's talk to the city about housing and really building that community back up. I have property in Tulsa, in North Tulsa, and there's nothing on it right now because it got burned down unintentionally. But I don't plan on selling it because I feel like it's the place for me to be. And so in closing, I just want to say bluntly, we need to bring back Greenwood the legacy that they left us. Even though it was burned down, that legacy is there.
Yeah.
And
We don't
so,
have to leave it that way.
right.
So that's right. If you'd like to hear of other topics that you'd like to hear us talk bluntly about, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are here to bring topics that you want to hear, that's near and dear to you as a community, as a society, and we'd love to talk bluntly about things you like to hear.